On today's episode of the Cryptoverse, we are going to look at the markets. We're going to look at the Bitcoin all-time high price of $5,225. We're going to look at how Bitcoin Core are already working on a new upgrade to Bitcoin beyond segregated witness. We are going to look at an article from MoneySavingExpert.com about how the UK government are about to ban all charges when people pay with credit or debit cards. We're going to look at this article from Dashforce News about them partnering with Alt36 to integrate with retail payments and specifically within the cannabis industry. There's an article about the Ethereum fork on the official Ethereum blog, which gives a few tips and tricks. Also, Bitcoin.com report on the Bitcoin Gold project and how they've responded to some negative criticism, albeit not very effectively at all. And again, I'm speaking at the CryptoFinance conference next week, and I have 2 free tickets if you would like one. So all of that coming up on today's episode of the Cryptoverse, so stay right there. Hi there guys, welcome to the latest episode of the Cryptoverse, your regular dose of news and commentary on Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies and blockchains. I'm your host, Chris Coney. So let's look at the movers and shakers of the day. We turn to coinmarketcap.com for this. So we've got Bitcoin up 6.28% today. That's put a big boost on the old market cap overall, 160 billion, and 53% would be Bitcoin's dominance. We'll look at the Bitcoin chart in just a moment. But beyond that, we have BitConnect up 8.8%. It's on a 7-day uptrend, BitConnect, so good for them. 2 other big movers in the top 30 here. We've got Ardor up 9.8% and PivX up 13%. It's nice to see that PivX are finally living up to their name of being a private instant verified transaction. When I first interviewed the guys from the PivX community, it wasn't private by default and it wasn't instant by default, but now they are implementing some real heavy privacy features into their currency. Salt is down 10.9%. That's good news for me because, like I said the other day, I wanted to get myself some salt in my portfolio, and this little 11% drop is an opportunity to do that. It's quite far off its all-time high as well, so that's other good news. Veritasium is up 24.56% today, putting it in 38th place at $85.18, 171 million market cap. And Veritasium has been up last couple of days on the trot. Below that is Walton, which is down to 10.24%, and it's in 39th place. For the crazy coin today, we have 135% gain for Monacoin. I don't think I would be moaning about that, would you? So if you've got some Monacoin, that might be a good selling point. A final note about peer plays, it's $5.57 today. That's good news because it was as low as $2.50 recently. And I'm mentioning this because I own quite a bit of peer plays. And even though it says it's down 10% on the day here, me and my patrons who own a lot of this were talking about it the other day, and we'll sure be delighted that it's back up above $5.50. Moving on to the price chart then. Here's the Bitcoin price chart. Right now it's trading at 51.67, and it had a high today of $5,225. That's never been there before. This is only the second time that it's hit 5,000. The previous was the 2nd of September, where it bounced right off and came back down into the China crash, all the way down to $3,000. So in my chart analysis here, Bitcoin has then broken out of my uptrending channel, and it's obviously way above that now. So I would expect it to pull back into that channel, or at least come back and test 5,000 for support before taking off again. If it hits 5,000 support, then that should be a pretty solid floor and a base going forward. Moving on to the news then, there's an article here from CoinDesk called Just Segwit. Bitcoin Core is already working on a new scaling upgrade. So here we go. It says the upgrade has already started a chain reaction. It's talking about Segwit. So Segwit has already started a chain reaction of work on other optimizations geared towards more users being adopted and accommodated. So that's the thing I think people forget about Segwit. It wasn't primarily in and of itself supposed to be a scaling solution. Yes, it does increase the capacity of a block, but primarily it was meant to lay the foundation for lots of other innovations that would be put on top. So there was a whole bunch of innovations, because Segwit was invented a long time ago, right? And it was tested for 18 months. And in that 18 months, there were tons of other open source developers in the community waiting for Segwit so they could launch their own additions to Bitcoin and technologies on top of that. And now that Segwit is launched, it's kind of lifted the lid on all that innovation for Bitcoin. So it says, while businesses and miners are pushing for more aggressive scaling via things like the controversial Segwit 2x proposal, the team behind Bitcoin's most widely used software, Bitcoin Core, is focused on another effort called Schnorr signatures. So under the current scheme, which is ECDSA, each piece of a Bitcoin transaction has to be signed individually, while with Schnorr signatures, all the data can be signed at once. So rather than signing each individual piece of paper, you could put them in a pile, wrap them up, just sign the top copy and say, I agree to all this, So signing them in batches is what we're talking about here. So there are three main benefits to this. First, it says decreasing the number of signatures increases the amount of transaction data that can be fit into each block without increasing the size of the block. Secondly, by merging all the transactions, the technology enhances privacy because it makes it harder to determine where the transactions are coming from because they're all batched together. And third, it's believed this change could curb spam attacks. And this is newsworthy because it says here, most recently, the developers stumbled upon an under-the-radar cryptography research paper that could help them build this whole algorithm faster. So that's pretty good stuff. So there's more in this article if you want to dig into it. I'll put it in the show notes. Moving on to the moneysavingexpert.com. The UK government is to ban all charges for paying by credit or debit cards. So for example, if you go to a budget airline such as Ryanair, or if you book with a booking agent like thetrainline.com, for example, because they're middlemen, because their margins are so thin, the fee that they pay to Visa, MasterCard, and so on to process payments, they pass them on to the customer. So just like when you get to the checkout, you say, this is the price of the flight or the train ticket. Then you say, I want to pay with PayPal, or I want to pay with a American Express. And then it says, oh, okay, if you want to pay with that payment method, we're going to have to add X% or £1.50 booking fee or whatever it is on top of the transaction. So this is the thing that's going to be banned. They're not going to be allowed to do that anymore. I think this is a good thing because it was kind of a little scheme to get more money out of people. You would advertise the headline price, people would be attracted to the headline price, accept the headline price, but then they would end up paying all these additional fees, which I don't think is ethical, right? Because you may end up paying more than a competitor, even though the headline price seemed cheaper. Kind of reminds me when I checked out of my Las Vegas hotel and they say, yeah, right now you just got to pay the taxes and the resort fee, which was like $400. And I'm like, I mean, I know about resort fees and taxes, but it's abnormal, that way of doing things. You expect to pay up front, which I did with the hotel, and then you think, that's sorted. And then you go, oh, of course, another $400, right? I don't like it. It's not good. With that $400, I may have stayed somewhere else, right? I could have afforded to stay somewhere else, perhaps. So that's that. I much prefer the price you see is the price you pay type of thing. Now, I mention this in the context of cryptocurrencies because cryptocurrencies are going to seem inferior if you have to pay a fee, to pay with a cryptocurrency. And now, from a consumer's point of view, they can pay with a credit or debit card without this additional fee. So it's going to make credit and debit cards seem superior than cryptocurrencies in the UK at the very least, right? Now, the companies are just going to build the fees into the price, right? But this doesn't matter. It's the consumer protection that matters. So I think this is a bad thing for cryptocurrencies because they're going to seem like you have to pay a fee as the buyer. Moving on to Dashforce news here. There's this company Alt36, which are like a retail payments company, and they've decided to integrate Dash. And talking about low margin industries like budget airlines and booking agents, this article talks about that's a good market for Dash. Because if a Dash transaction is like 2 cents, then merchants will be open to that. Because if they're running on a 5% margin and they have to pay 2% of that to say Visa or MasterCard, well, Dash will seem like a lot nicer alternative if those transactions are cheaper. So because most of their margin will go to paying these payment fees, so it's really hard for them to make money. So cryptocurrencies for those low margin industries are very appealing. Beyond that, though, Dash is also getting into the cannabis industry. So they've got this partnership with CanTrade, which it says here is California's premier cannabis-specific marketplace for cannabis, and it's a CRM system, which is a system for managing, relationships with your customers, your suppliers, and so on. So you can imagine, never mind the consumer paying with Dash, you could have the manufacturers, the logistics companies, and just the back-end business-to-business stuff could all be settling transactions in Dash because it'll be quicker, it'll be cheaper, and that's kind of a good use case. So this could be a game changer, as it says right here. So good for Dash on that front. Moving on to the official Ethereum blog, they have an announcement about the Byzantium hard fork with some clarification on exactly what's happening, and nothing to worry about. When it's going to happen is likely about 12 noon on Monday, the 16th of October. What you need to do is just make sure your Ethereum client is up to date. That's pretty straightforward. And then they list a couple of changes that are included in the Byzantium hard fork. 3 of these are particularly interesting to me. One says transaction receipts can now include a status field to indicate a success or failure. Pretty good, because user feedback on whether it worked or not is pretty important. But that, my mind took that combined with this thing that says support for variable length return values. Kind of interesting. So I read those 2 things and thought, okay, so you can say to the user, this transaction failed, and then give them some kind of custom error message, right? And give them some clue. If it just says transaction failed, an error occurred, right? It's not very informative, and neither can the user take that to anybody to get any help because you have no clue what went wrong. So maybe that's how that can be used. And finally, it says here, it's going to bring in a delay to the Ethereum Ice Age / the difficulty bomb. It's going to delay this by 1 year. So this is the thing where Ethereum is going to move to proof of stake. And they're going to do that by creating an incentive for miners to use proof of stake instead of proof of work. And they'll create that incentive by kind of dropping a bomb where the difficulty to mine Ethereum suddenly goes through the roof. So it might take like a year to mine a block, and then no one will want to do that, right? So that's what they mean by the difficulty bomb. And that's going to be pushed back by 1 year. In addition to, this is a reduction of the block reward from 5 Ether per block to 3 Ether per block. So it's not a reduction in the overall supply of Ethereum, but it is slowing down the rate at which Ethereum is created. So it's a slower supply. So that should have a gentle upward pressure on the price of Ethereum, but a gentle one at that. Moving on to Bitcoin Gold, they've spoke to Bitcoin.com and responded to some negative criticism about the project. Now that sounds good initially, but having read the article, they don't do a very good job of it, quite frankly. I thought it was going to be positive, but it's very hard to take Bitcoin Gold seriously at this point. I'm a little bit worried about people being greedy and thinking, well, I want my Bitcoin Gold, and perhaps surrendering their private key to some wallet service that claims to give them access to their Bitcoin Gold. And of course, as soon as you surrender your private key, any Bitcoin that you've got in that wallet with the same key can be taken out. So this is what I'm worried about. I would say don't do anything in the short term, right? Just like with Bitcoin Cash, even now you can still get access to your Bitcoin Cash if you haven't yet. So there is no rush, right? As long as the chain still exists, like Bitcoin Cash is still going, you'll still be able to get it later. All you need to do for now is make sure your Bitcoin is in a wallet that you control the key to, and if Bitcoin Gold launches and stays alive, then you'll still be able to get access to it later in a calm and a secure way once we're clear on the project and the wallets and all the rest of it. So for the time being, just make sure your Bitcoin is in a wallet you control and then wait. So that's my advice. And finally, just a reminder to anyone who doesn't know, I'm going to Norway, Oslo, Norway next week to speak at the CryptoFinance Conference 2017. This is all about the future of finance, and I'm giving a talk on decentralized exchanges. Max Wang, the head of TurboTech, has just been announced as a new speaker, and that he joins us Julian Hosp from 10x, Ivan from Ivan on Tech YouTube channel, and this fellow, which I'm looking forward to meeting, Vit, the president of Liberland. So I'm hoping to get some conversations with these guys outside the conference when we do the VIP dinner and all this sort of stuff. So very much looking forward to that. I have 2 free tickets. If anyone wants to come and experience this, then tweet at me. Let me know on Twitter that you would like these tickets, one or both of them, and then we'll sort it out, okay? So thanks very much for joining me today, guys. If you liked this episode, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you're new around here, get subscribed. And if you would like access to my very best material, such as my structured online courses, they will teach you things like how to make and save money with Bitcoin, check out cryptoversity.com. Alright guys, that's all for today. I will be back tomorrow with another episode of the Cryptoverse. So until then, it's me, Chris Coney, saying bye for now.